Togetherness Talks. Today we're looking at creativity and culture with Pippa Evans. Let's introduce Pippa and find out a bit about her. Pippa is Pippa is an improviser, a comic, and a lover of all things musical. She says if you put Chaz and Dave, Miranda Richardson, and Brian Conley in a blender, you'd get her. Pippa has been on TV. She's been on Tonight, the London Palladium, Fast and Loose. She's the voice of the crab on the Zoopla advert. She's also known for being in Showstoppers, the improvised musical, where they create a new musical show every night on the spot from scratch. And she co-founded the Sunday Assembly with Sanderson Jones, which is a kind of church without God, where people can get together and celebrate being live. So let's welcome Pippa on. Hello, Pippa Evans, und willkommen. Bienvenue.
Dankeschön. Ja, ich bin sehr gut. Ich habe ein gutes Wochenende und super seid, ja.
Yeah, super seid geschön. It's great to have you on, Pippa. Thanks so much for making the time. As I was saying a bit before we came on, I've been a great fan of your work and just the way you behave generally as a performer. With my own background in performance, I found it sometimes tricky to you want to show up on stage and be good and happy and well, and it can be a lot of pressure, and I love the way you handle it.
Oh, thanks. I mean, I suppose I just really like people, and I think it also, we fair to say, it took a long time to learn how to do that, because when I started performing, I would be really anxious about making sure I did everything right and did a really good show, and then that got to a place where I could trust that I would do a really good show, and that therefore the audience become your friends rather than your colleagues. Even they're there to also enjoy a good show, rather than the enemy that must be beaten into submission.
Yeah, imagine them writing down like, oh, she did something wrong there. Yeah.
Well, exactly. Yeah, you do. You think the whole audience is critics, but actually, people have paid some money to go out and have a good time. So their basic wish is just to have a good time. So if you can deliver that, that's great.
Well, let's start here with creativity and with being with nothing. So as an improviser, this moment where you're on stage and you have some suggestions from the audience, but then you have to create. Do you ever feel nervous still about that? And what do you do to support yourself to be able to enter that flow state to create?
That's a really good question. I do feel nervous, actually, just because your brain, that nervousness is your body kind of saying, are you sure you want to do this? You're about to go on a stage and you've not planned anything. And so you just have to go, yeah, I do. I love doing this. And so much of it is about trust, particularly with improvisation, is about trusting you have the knowledge. So with Showstopper, which is an improvised musical, just have to trust that I know how musicals work, and I know how to improvise a song, and I know that I have a million words in my head and characters and voices, and I can act. So just bringing those, all you're doing is doing those skills instantly rather than having pre-planned them, which is why I think improvisation is a like a bolt-on skill. That's why I call it, like a phone package, you get a bolt-on. So it's something that you can add to anything, and it just improves your ability to be in the moment with whatever it is you're doing.
I think one of the first workshops I went to on performance or improvisation, the teacher said, in fact, it was with Jonathan Kay, the fooling teacher. I don't know if you know Jonathan.
I don't know.
He said, when you improvise, when you get up in the morning, you don't plan your whole day. You don't think, oh, I'm going to get up and I'm going to put my shoes on. I'm going to have cereal in that order. It's like you just do it, and improvisation is tapping into that. Like we're all improvising all the time anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. We've sort of allowed ourselves to put it in a gilded cage as a specialist skill that can only be done by the very special and very clever. But actually, we're all improvising most of the time, and a lot of times when people get a bit trapped, it's because they've stopped improvising. Like you say, have started going, I have to have my breakfast at 8 and I have to do this at 9 and have to do this at this time. And if we get completely regimented, then when something doesn't happen in the time frame we've given ourselves, or in the the plan we've made, that's when we get stressed out, because we can't adapt, we can't be agile with the way we think.
Is this so you have a book coming out? Maybe it's a good time to touch on that, because it's called Improv Your Life. And is it about that, adapting to situations?
Yeah, essentially it's about how much of a gift improvisation is in terms of tapping into being and being in the moment. So a lot of the time when we feel anxious about life, and a lot of it came through my own problems I had with anxiety, and how stressed I would get about things. And generally that stress for me came from me thinking, right, in 5 years, this has to happen, or this is how this project's going to go. And when inevitably it didn't go the way I thought it would, I would get incredibly anxious about not knowing what to do next, and what happens next, and what if I do this next, what might happen if I do that thing. So really the book is about the principles of improvisation and how you can apply them to life, so that you can feel freer in your choice making, and not feel like each choice holds the weight of your entire life in it. I think I don't know, I feel like we're so achievement focused as a society, particularly, I can only speak really for the UK, that kind of wish to hit goals rather than values is where often our struggles are, because the goals are what we measure ourselves by rather than our values.
I love that. And a phrase that's been coming up recently is that we're human beings, not human doings.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's 100%. I totally agree with that. And I find, and it took me ages to get there, because I went to a school that was like, you should all be the prime minister. I was like, how are we all going to be the prime minister? And so when I felt like I was failing because I wasn't hitting whatever goal I'd set for myself, I get incredibly upset. And rather than going, well, what are you doing? Like, what is actually happening right now? Like, what can you actually be proud of and excited about? And what can the things that aren't going well teach you? So, improvisation, Keith Johnson has a great phrase about looking backwards. So an improviser is always walking through a scene backwards, because you don't know what's coming. You only know what's happened before. So we have to just keep thinking about, what can I learn from that? What do I want to bring forward? What do I want to reincorporate? And what do I want to leave behind? What do I not need anymore? What are the storylines that are wrapped up or no longer helpful to me?
I've seen Showstoppers a number of times, and you're always brilliant in it. And there's a great satisfaction when themes come back around and phrases come back around to get reincorporated. And it seems like genius. But I know you also do train together a lot to get that level of smoothness.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, half of the battle with improvisation, when you're improvising in a literal sense, I am improvising a musical, is working with people and again, how much easier is life when you're working with people that when you've got established relationships that you can trust, and you can lean into them rather than maybe be hesitant. So much of improvisation is about trust. The whole concept of yes and is about trust. The reason we whenever we start a workshop, and anyone who's watching this or will know that the first thing people train you in usually is the phrase yes and. And it's not about, a lot of people mistake that to be, you have to say yes to everything. You must always be super positive and nothing must ever be negative. But actually what it is at the beginning, when you're working with people, you have to be in a space of acceptance and accepting who they are in that moment, so that you can learn to be with them in the same way. So I use this example in my book, I think, of a first date. So when you first go on a date with someone, you will probably agree with a lot of what they say, and you'll laugh at jokes that aren't particularly funny, because you're kind of yes-anding them, because you want to build a space of trust. And it's only sort of on the third, fourth date where you think it's going somewhere that you might start to be a bit bolder in questioning or challenging, because you've got the baseline of trust, which is, I accept you who you are, but I'm now going to challenge you on this point. So in that sense, in that moment, you start to yes and the relationship, because in that moment you're looking for a deeper connection.
That's very nice. I was thinking recently about polarization and how to actually find some common ground when we have different ideas about things. Maybe Donald Trump or abortion, or all of these really nice tripwires that we could stumble across. And this idea of building trust. focusing first on what do we agree about, what do we feel good about, where do we meet, and then there's some goodwill to actually explore ideas a bit further.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And part of the problem with the polarization thing is we don't actually spend the time. It takes a lot of time to build trust. So yes, you can't walk into a Trump rally and go, I just really want to understand what you think, because why would they trust you? You're a lefty, come to tell them that you'd love to hear their point, and then I'd like to tell you why your point is wrong, rather than actually spending time with people and being with them. I think Indra Adnan's The Collective, it's an alternative political platform, is a really good example of exactly that, is going into communities and spending time with communities and doing the work communities want to do, rather than I went to university and did PPE and I'm coming in to tell you. So I'm going to do 1 day workshop with you, listen to what you think, and then tell you what I actually think we should do.
Lovely.
But the challenge of that is the time, and so much of what we want, we want to achieve, we want to solve everything. I mean, even with COVID, we were gifted, in a sense, a huge amount of time for us to just be in it and challenge our own values and think. But so much of it has been about, when are we going to get back to normal? Because actually it's quite a terrifying thought that normal is not coming. Like, normal is, there is going to be a new normal, and we won't know it until it's been for about 15 years.
Oh, I don't want it to go back to normal. One of my favorite things was, I feel like I'm now traveling at the speed of a human being. And that came through COVID. I was like, oh yeah, I don't want to run around to 20 places every single day. I just like chilling at home, actually. And yeah, that was really, really good. Let's talk a bit about the role of comedy in culture.
Okay.
If that's okay with you. Because so I started out doing comedy at Buddhafield Festival, which is a wonderful alternative festival set up by the Western Buddhist Order. It's drug and alcohol free, and it attracts a lot of people who, they meditate, and also a lot of people who like crystals, a lot of people who will realign your DNA for 25 quid, and like a whole kind of host of different people. And the joy that I found there was in lovingly holding up a mirror to the experience that was there in front, so that people could see themselves and laugh at it. It was permission to laugh at those parts of themselves. And that felt really, really, really valuable, and it seemed to work really well. So I think there's a really important role for comedy in culture. And I'm curious about, do you see it as sort of profound and archetypal as that, or is it just a laugh?
I think it would be possible as a comedian to ever say the phrase, I think this is archetypal and profound what I'm doing, without laughing in my own face. I would have to then look in a mirror or hold up another mirror so I could look at my own face. But 100%. That's the role. And I think also that role can be played in several different ways. So some people do love a really harsh comic who comes in and goes, you're all idiots, and they go, yeah, we're all idiots. Oh, you're great. And then other people are able to do it in a much more gentle way. So for example, I was doing some research on Victoria Wood recently, and one of the things that really struck me about her stand-up comedy and why she was so popular was because she was laughing at us whilst she was one of us, so it wasn't a sense of other, it was a sense of aren't we ridiculous?
Yes.
And I think that's really important, actually. With Showstopper and other improv shows I do, the wonder of that is being able to be on stage and freely make comedy scenes happen from the audience suggestions, and be able to, you'll just find, things that are happening right now coming out of your mouth, and you'll start sort of exploring, what that means, whether that's a scene about, kombucha. I've done many a scene about kombucha and people making their own, when we all go, oh, I'm going to make my own sourdough and I'm going to do all this. And then we're secretly eating Nutella out of a jar, hoping no one sees us, and things like that. All of the contradictions that we find ourselves in, because I think at the moment we're in a very difficult contradictory space where there's loads of us. And I'd say most people are trying desperately to find how to be a better, more ethical, kind consumer who only buys from the local shop and supports whatever. And yet, you're constantly getting flash ads for a new mascara that makes your eyes look beautiful, and you find yourself clicking on it. And so suddenly you are the problem. So we are the problem and the solution at once. And I think that's a really hard tension for us to hold. And comedy can be a lovely little burst of that bubble every so often, so that we're allowed to laugh at how hard it is. Because I think a lot of the time we forget to laugh at ourselves and realize that we're all failing, and the reason we're failing is because we're trying. So that is the great thing, that we're all trying, and yet it is impossible to do it right.
Oh, that's so lovely. It's this humanity of it is difficult to be human, and we are full of contradictions, and that permission to laugh at ourselves. And I think it opens up a layer that once we can laugh at us, once we can take ourselves a bit less seriously, then we can actually, I think it leads to a deeper intimacy with each other, deeper connection. So I'm a big fan of comedy, not to attack, but to peel back the layers, to lovingly peel back the layers, so that we can kind of dance naked in the Bedouin tent, of life, and really embrace it. And the kind of comedy that I used to do was, well, we had a sauna. I don't know if you've ever been to the Lost Horizon sauna. It still goes around to festivals now.
No, I can't say I ever did. So
this is what I did when I left university with some friends. We took over this sauna, and people would go to the festival and dance around, and then they'd get. This was in the days before the boutique festivals, before all the hot showers and stuff. So people would come and they'd have a sauna and cold showers and really get rejuvenated. And then we'd play with them in this tent with different musicians. We'd do competitions to find out, who's the most spiritual person on the site. We'd do, one night we did a big sleepover. And what I loved was this immediacy of working with the audience right there, so that there wasn't a big stage and big lighting rig. We were all just there together, and people would shout things out, and it felt like this kind of village humor where we're all laughing at ourselves. It was really enjoyable. It was really, really good. And I kind of, when I went into the comedy industry a bit, I kind of missed that sort of archaic ability. There's a few comedians who do it really, really well. I love Adam. Which Adam is it who won the Edinburgh Fringe Award about?
Riches.
Adam Riches. Oh my God, I love the way he plays with the audience. He's just a master. But I'd like to see more. I'd like to see more space for humor, more space that we can take ourselves less seriously. And when we are being so austere about our sourdough and where we buy our toilet paper from, right? We lose touch with the bigger picture, that the common humanity, which is we're all just here falling through time and space. No one really knows what's going on, right? And there's something really grounding and connecting about acknowledging that together.
And I think the together is a really important thing, and that again why I really love improvisation as a training tool, or I like to think of it as like a martial art for the soul, because you cannot improvise without some other stimulus. I mean, someone will, I'm sure, write in. I was going to say, like, this is going live, and say, of course you can. I can sit in my front room and improvise a thing. I can talk to myself for 10 minutes. But what I mean is that you have to be in relation to someone else. So whilst it is a self-development tool in a sense, it never allows you to forget that you're always in relation to others. So even if we do all of the work, all this wonderful work, and we're meditating and we're eating quinoa every 5 minutes, if we're not thinking about how our work, our behavior, our being in the world relates to others, then I don't believe that's a fulfilling life.
Oh, I agree with you. I like the moment I'm working a lot with this idea of sovereignty. If we want to come into a real relationship with ourselves and the world, we need to get in touch with what we want and what we need. And instead of always doing what we think we should be doing, we need to learn to connect to our purpose and our sense of belonging. And there's this idea that, you could kind of be the sort of Donald Trump version, which is like, screw you guys, I'll do what I want, I don't care what you think. But it's not that. It's more this connecting, staying connected with your heart to the world. So we're sensing and responding the whole time, totally in touch with our needs, totally able to say yes or no, but still in touch with the world. And so I like that image of the king or the queen wearing a crown, because I think it makes you stand up straight and chest open. And so let's talk a little bit about this archetype, because you do say that your part Miranda Hart, who played the queen in Blackadder.
No, she didn't.
No,
that's Miranda Richardson.
Oh my God.
Miranda Hart is Miranda. I mean, she is Miranda. She's a stand-up comedian. She says, what's her catchphrase? I can't remember what her catchphrase is. But actually, I will point out that website is about to change completely. So I actually feel like that was me 5 years ago. That idea of me. And actually, if I was going to give myself an archetype right now, it would be, or a title, it would be the wounded jester.
Oh yeah.
Which is the comedian who I've been out and done comedy, and I still do comedy, but I sort of arrived and went, oh, this isn't what I thought it would be. Sort of like as you say, Adam, like I missed the community of it. Actually, once you get to a certain level, it's really lonely, and it does feel like it becomes all about how many TV shows have you been on, which is exactly actually as you introduced me. That's why that page is there, is to go, I'm valid. I've been on Live at the Palladium. But actually, that's all true. I have been on those shows, but is that really how I want to measure myself? So that website will be gone quite soon.
So what I find, thank you for that, Pippa. And one of the things I really like about you is that you did start the Sunday Assembly, and you're now working for Perspectiva. So it's about taking comedy and bringing it, maybe not comedy, but taking what you're doing more into culture. You see a bigger picture. I see some comedians are really, really focused on their careers, which is fine, but you're opening up into something a bit wider, which I find fascinating.
Yeah, I think just because I really love people. And I find I just don't get a huge sense of achievement by just doing a good show. So I love doing a good show, love being on stage. I am a show off. I will sing if you ask me to, but I want my skills to be used in a way that is traveling on, is helping create something bigger than, as you say, than myself. I often when we were doing Showstopper, I was the assistant artistic director for a year or 2 years, and I brought into the rehearsal room this phrase, which was I to the we, to the them, to the us, so that we were always thinking of I need to come on stage strong and feel strength in me and trust my skills. And I need to be in relation to you guys, the we are on stage together creating something. And them, the audience, are also there. So we have to acknowledge as a group the audience. And then only by incorporating them as well do we have us. So we're always thinking in relation to others and a bigger picture. We're always going out in that circle.
How very integral. How very lovely.
Yeah. And then I go, oh no, I sound like a wanker. And that's important, I think, to check in. How much do I sound like a wanker? Because just in terms of how easy is it for people to get on board with this thinking? Because sometimes I find a lot of the work that's really important, that's happening, uses these big words, and everyone looks like they're just doing hot yoga all the time, and they've got six packs and beads around their neck. And I think, how am I supposed to identify how do I see myself in you? So always thinking about the language you're using, and who else are we including in, how are we branching this circle out so that we're involving more and more people, so that people from different backgrounds, coming from different walks of life, are coming in, and then other people from different walks of life can see themselves. So that it's not an exclusive elite group of I found the answer, but more, let's see how many people we can get in this group so that we can all sort of discover this journey we're on together.
And earlier you were talking about values, and I feel like we're coming back a little bit to values, these values that we share in common, these ideas that we can connect with between us. I'd love to, we're coming towards the end in a few minutes.
How sad.
I'd love to talk a bit about, what would you say to someone? How could you support someone who feels like, oh, I'm not creative, I don't act, I can't even draw, but they want to start expressing themselves a bit? What would you say to someone like that?
I would say, think about whose voice that is, for one, because at some point we were all sat in a pot of paint naked as a kid, just drawing, people, the sun or whatever. And we never at any point thought we would present that picture like, look what I did at school today. And we should be able to have that attitude with so much we do. I think there's a real difference between creativity and the industry of creativity. And I think that's where we get stuck sometimes, is people go, I want to be a dancer. I'm going to watch these J-Lo videos and see if I can be inspired. Like, don't start at J-Lo. She can inspire, but she worked really hard to get there. So sometimes we're trying to reach the heights of something rather than explore it. So how can we just take a piece of paper? If it's drawing, that's, I feel like I want to draw, but I'm terrified that I'm not good at it. Just draw for yourself. Like, who are you drawing for? Draw for yourself. If you want to write jokes, just write the jokes and never perform them. Just practice the practice of the creativity rather than thinking about the performance, the exposure, the adulation. So that we're just getting into a place where we can start to stir that pot, so that maybe we will get to a point when we go, actually, I wrote a poem. Can I read it to you? Just to a friend, or we might send it to somebody. That we might just dance in our living room and explore how our body moves rather than think, how can I get on a stage and do that? And I think that, again, I refer back to my own life, because I think I used to be in a space of, how can I write the joke that will get me on Mock the Week, rather than how am I funny? Yeah. So I think it's really important to think about what your intention is with it. But really with creativity, it's just start.
Begin and start to stir the pot, yeah?
Yeah, that's right. Take a spoon, give it a little wiggle and see what comes out.
Make it for your own pleasure, yeah?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I love it. My favorite projects I've been in, I just felt really, really happy to do them, really excited, delicious. Johan Hari talks about the difference. Couple of big words coming in here.
Great. As long as you say them and then make a face, I'll accept them. Intrinsic motivation versus extrinsic motivation. So if you, like you're saying, if you want to learn the violin because you want to make your parents happy and you want to be grade 9 and you want it to look good on your CV, it's different to learning to play because you love it and you fall in love with the music and it's like, it's a full moon, I'm going to go out tonight and stand on top of the hill and I'm going to play in the rain, and I'm going to go and dance like no one's watching and all that kind of stuff. So I love that thing about connecting to your own intrinsic motivation for yourself. This is for me. I'm drawing for me. I'm making faces for me, or whatever. Yeah. And so just to link it back to improv, because that's what I do, is the great phrase is, who are we, where are we, what are we doing? So to build a platform in an improv show, we just need to know who the characters are, where they are, and what they're doing. And exactly the same can be said. Like, so who am I? I'm Pippa. I'm going to paint a picture. And why? What are we doing? What are we doing? What are we doing this for? Well, because I'm hoping it will get in the National Gallery. Well, that's probably a big leap. So maybe just go back to exactly as you say. Why don't you just draw a picture and see what happens, and maybe you can just enjoy it, and then you can be inspired by other people. And if it ends up in the National Gallery, that's great. But if that's our aim, anything below that is only going to cause disappointment, and we'll again go back to that voice that says, I'm not creative, rather than I seem to be ambitious in the wrong way.
Oh, lovely. Thanks so much, Pippa. To finish up, can you tell us what's your top tip for connecting to each other in a meaningful way?
Wow, that's a
Just drop that one in
just
there.
drop that in. Listening, always listening. Are you actually listening? Make sure you're listening. Listen with your body and with your ears and with your soul.
Oh, I'm listening with my face right now, and it feels good. My face is a giant ear. Thanks so much, Pippa. So your book, Improv Your Life, is out in February, I believe.
Indeed it is. But I would do lots of workshops online. So if you go to pippaevans.com, you'll find all of that information.
Thanks again so much, Pippa Evans, for your time today. And have a good Christmas, and catch up in the new year.
See you, Adam.
Thanks. Ciao. Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.